Okay, so welcome to the CCCB. Thank you very much for coming. And welcome, Zadie Smith is here with us. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll take the opportunity to welcome all of the schools that came here today: Col·legi Montserrat, Institut Sabadell, Betània Patmos, Pompeu Fabra Institute, Thalassa Institute, Lluís Domènech i Montaner, and the Salesià Sant Josep School. Thank you very much for coming.
Molt bé, jo sóc el Miquel.
My name is Miquel. I am the person who will be guiding this conversation. I'll tell you how this will work. I will now introduce Zadie, and then we will have a conversation, she and I, for a little while, and then we will open it up to the room, which is clearly the most interesting part of the session. She is looking forward to knowing what this conversation brings up in you, what it evokes. And before we start, as we always do, we will do a very quick thing to take the temperature of the room. I'll ask a few questions and you can raise your hand if the answer is yes. I know it's a bit of an intimate exercise. It takes a bit of honesty, but you will see how these will help us get an idea of where the conversation is going to go. One of the ideas that is most important in the latest book by Zadie Smith is imposture, a fraud. A fraud is a person who impersonates someone else. Has it ever happened to you that you felt that you were an imposter, a fraud? Can you raise your hand if this has ever happened to you? Maybe you're saying things or doing things that are not exactly true, that you do not exactly feel or think, that you're posing in a way. Has it ever happened to you? Okay, all right. All right, you can lower your hands. Yeah, I see. Okay, second question. Has it ever happened to you that you've had someone in front of you who you don't really like? No, hold on. That has happened for sure. Hold on. Someone you don't really like, they're not very nice, they're not right in what they're saying, but for some mysterious reason you become friends and you thank them and you say, oh, yes, you're right. Has this ever happened to you? And finally, we get the idea now. Has it ever happened to you that in your family, in high school, in the neighborhood, someone labels you and there's no way of you getting out of that, what they've seen in you? They've labeled you and that's it. Has this ever happened to you? And there's no way out of it. Okay, got it. You're in the right lane to now have this conversation.
Thank you for being here. La Zadie és escriptora.
Zadie is a writer. She was born in London, where she lives now. When she was 22 approximately, she published her first novel, which was very successful. And ever since then, she's continued to write on topics such as identity, people's complexity, inequality, racism, many of these topics that are of her interest that she develops in her novels. She writes different types of books, sometimes novels, sometimes essays, reflection, thought, sometimes short stories. So she has published many books, and now she's visiting us because she's presenting her latest book, The Fraud. I guess many of you have not read. It's okay. We will now have a conversation that stems from some of the ideas of the book, and, well, maybe to motivate you to read it if you're interested. So let's begin. I would like to start by asking you why you started writing books.
I was very young when I wrote my first book. I think I started it when I was 20. And it actually came out of a weird story. So my mother is Jamaican and my father is English, or he's dead, but he was English. And so my father had one family when he was young, and then a second family, which is me and my brothers. And one day when I was in college, his first daughter, who's white and much older than me, came to visit me. And I asked her, how did my parents meet? Because my mother was 20 and my father was 50. And I'd always wondered, well, how did these two people who have nothing in common, who hated each other, who got divorced pretty soon, ever come to meet each other? And she said, well, I was at a party and your dad came to pick up me. and your mum was at this party. And that idea stuck in my head. So I started writing this scene about a young black Jamaican English woman who meets an old English man at a party. And the novel went from there. So that was the kind of first inspiration of the story. But then it became about my city, my friends, my people, and also all the books I'd read. You know, I was a big reader. I grew up a reader, so White Teeth was like an explosion of books.
Anem a intentar entrar una mica en...
Let's try and get into that story that you present in your latest book. It is a book with many characters, many things happen, but it stems from a real fact, a historical fact that happened approximately in 1860, 1870 in England. It's a story that I will tell you about now briefly so you have an idea of what it is about. But basically, it tells us about a very important trial that took place in England about a very rich man, Roger Tichborne, who in a shipwreck disappeared. He was a very rich man, left an inheritance. He was left for dead, disappeared, and 10 years later in Australia, a butcher said, no, it's me. I'm Roger Tichborne. This inheritance belongs to me. He went to London and claimed the inheritance. It's very surreal. There's a big trial, and this is the real story. And then around it, you built a much more complex novel. But this historical fact that is very surprising is something that I guess you came across at some point. And I wanted to ask, when did you come across this story, and why did you feel the need to build all of this story around this fact?
I guess what interested me in it is that this fraud guy turned up in England with a black man by his side, a man who had been enslaved, who was from Jamaica, where my mother's family are from, and who backed up his story, who said, yes, this is the man. And it's quite unusual to hear from a Jamaican in the 19th century, and this man was in court for 2 years giving evidence. His name was Andrew Bogle. And it interested me. Like, even going back to White Teeth, I guess maybe like the little kid in me always wanted to know, what is the relationship, obviously, between my mother and my father, but what is the relationship between England and Jamaica, these two countries without which I wouldn't have been born? So for me, it was like the end of a long bit of childhood wondering, like, how did my mother meet my father, but how did my mother come to be in England? How did this relationship ever occur? So Andrew Bogle is, it could have been from my family. He's from the parish next door, my family from St. Elizabeth in Jamaica. He was from St. Andrews. So it was just a way of thinking about the past of two countries, their connection with each other. It is not a book for teenagers, I have to say. I'm not going to make you read it, first of all. But it's a book, I've written a lot of books for young people, but this one was for me exactly the point of life I'm in, which I is depressingly, I'm middle-aged now. And this is a book about thinking about the past, not just my own past, but the past of my country.
Hi ha una altra cosa molt...
And there's something else that is very surprising in this book, which is that you, in order to tell this story, one of the key characters, maybe the protagonist, is not protagonist in the trial. It's a person, a woman, who is the governess of a writer of that time. And I wanted to ask you, in order to tell this story, you chose what we could call a secondary character. It's not the imposter. No, it's this woman who is in this other situation. And it is as if someone wants to tell the story of your class at school, and instead of having someone who always speaks in class tell the story, no. The person narrating the story is the one sitting at the back who never speaks, never asks questions. Almost no one knows their name. That's the protagonist of the story, the main character. So I wanted to ask you why choose this character so far removed from the trial to tell the story?
Because that person is a writer, the person you're describing at the back of the class who is always observing, who maybe doesn't always feel a part of what's going on, but is very attentive. That person is a writer. And obviously I'm a writer, but I'm aware that for a very long time, someone like me with my curiosity and my nosiness and my need to be in other people's business, if I was a woman, and if it's 1830, I could have all the same feelings I have right now, but no outlet, It was really hard to have an outlet. It was really hard to publish. It was really hard to put your ideas on paper. There are examples, Jane Austen, George Eliot, amazing English women who wrote, found a way to write. But I was thinking about what it would be like to be exactly as I am now or as you are now, but frustrated all the time. Always wanting to speak, always wanting to write, always wanting to be the person who was thinking through a situation, but with no access. I found it really interesting to imagine myself back there.
En moltes entrevistes he sentit que...
In many interviews, I've heard you explain that part of telling this story that happened 150 years ago is related also to the fact that there are links between the society back then, which sounds like it's completely in the past, and nowadays. And there are several things in your work that, well, we could think, why is this still happening? There's something that happens in the book that is very surprising, and I think it's very much related to the experience of going to high school and things that are strange and that happen there, which is that this main character, Eliza, works for a writer, and you describe him as a person who is a bit arrogant, a bit, well, he doesn't write so well, but he believes he's a genius. So, yeah, this happens at high schools as well. People who think the world of themselves, but they're not so much. So, why this woman praises this man or follows this man who is a disaster? So why does this happen? Why do we do this?
You know, in that case, the thing about William, you're right, he's not talented. Lots of people are not talented. It's not a crime to be untalented. And the thing about William is that he's kind. And it might not mean that much to you. Certainly when I was 15, I didn't give a shit about kind people. But now, at 48, it occurs to me that it's the greatest human value. I'd rather a kind person than a talented person 9 times out of 10, because they make life possible for other people. They make it livable. So yeah, William is a terrible writer. I'm not going to say he's a good writer, but he's not jealous. He's generous. He makes space for people in his life. He's kind. And she loves him to that degree. And loving people, someone because they're very good at something, I mean, I guess you can do it. But I've never found talent to be a virtue. Talent is an accident. It's a lovely one. It's great that people can sing and run fast or write books or whoop-de-doo. But the people who actually make life tolerable for us are the people who are kind, the people who are generous, and the people who make space for other people.
Una altra cosa que segurament té un paral·lel...
There's something else that probably is very much connected as well with our current reality, and it is that this trial that happened 150 years ago had a great audience. Many people went to court. It looked strange, a guy coming from Australia saying he's a millionaire and he has a right to that inheritance. And everyone sees that it doesn't quite fit, but everyone is fascinated. And this continues to happen to this day. We're interested. There are masses of people following love stories of actors and actresses, singers, true crime. So where do you think this fascination in our society comes from? This fascination to pay attention to things that we see, they're not completely true, like reality shows. Why are we fascinated by these stories?
I think there's a word for it now, parasociality. It's not really an obsession with whoever it is, Jennifer Lopez, Chappell Rowan, Ronaldo, whoever it is. It's about the community you make around this preoccupation. And back in the early days of the internet, which of course you won't remember, but I do remember, before it was corporately owned, before it was the business of billionaires, before it was a business of surveillance, that's exactly what the internet was. It was a series of basically group chats and chat rooms where people discussed passionately the things that they loved, whatever it was, Buffy or whatever, 90s preoccupation, football, hip-hop. It was a place of fandom where people were able to talk to each other directly, and in private, by the way, about the things that they adored. And to me, that was the beauty of the internet. It was a place where people could express themselves peer-to-peer and create these communities of love, basically, communities of enjoying things together. That is not the internet we have anymore. We have an internet where we are the product and we are surveyed, and people use the things we love and our natural feelings and desires to connect with each other and to obsess about a record or against us as a tool. So I have nothing against the idea of parasociality. I think it's just the way of making community. You love this thing, I love this thing, let's love it together. That's like one of the joys of life. But yes, now it's kind of used against us, right? It's something that we used to choose to spend our attention on because we loved it. We now find ourselves unable to stop because the algorithm is designed to keep us there. So that's a different, that's using something beautiful about us as a tool against us, yeah.
En aquest llibre hi ha aquest personatge.
In this book, we see Andrew Bogle, who is Jamaican, and I've read some interviews where you say that, yes, you were born in London, but you have ancestry in Jamaica, and this makes you especially interested to talk about this in your books, the relationship between the British Empire, colonization, Jamaica, and since there are many people in this room who were born in Barcelona but have ancestry in different places, sometimes this is a bit difficult to combine in your own identity. So I wanted to ask you, what has helped you when exploring this tension between having been born in one place but knowing that you have a heritage from somewhere else?
Right.
Have you found a way to arrange this in any way?
Well, I guess the difference is I don't believe in resolution. I'm not trying to resolve it. I don't need it to be one thing. In my case, it's different for everybody, but I come from two very long lines of poor people, poor English peasants and poor Jamaicans and enslaved Jamaicans. So my interest is in poor people. And what interested me in this book was exactly the solidarity between the poor in England and the poor in Jamaica, which was significant. But even if I had nothing to do with this history, even if it was nothing to do with me personally, those are the contingencies of my life. It's an accident that my father met my mother at a party. It's an accident that your father met your mother wherever they met. It's an accident where you're born. It's an accident where you come from. But for me, those kind of contingencies are an opportunity to be interested. So it's my gift that these things are the accidents of my birth and I can be interested in them. But I would never, I wouldn't limit my interest to those things just because I happen to be born of these two people. Senegal interests me, Spain interests me, France interests me, everything interests me. So I pursue the contingencies of my life. But I guess what I'm asking of people and other readers is to not think of their identities of things that have to be resolved or are, some mysterious essential thing that runs through their blood. But these marvelous accidents, which you have an opportunity to be curious about, be interested in, love, but with an equally open eye to other people's contingencies, other people's lives, the accidents that form them, those are equally interesting to me.
Moltes gràcies. Si us sembla bé,
Thank you very much. Now that we've gotten into the conversation a little bit, now we will open it up to the room. And of course, you can say to Zadie whatever you want, whatever comes to mind. I remind you that teachers are not allowed to ask questions now, and questions need to be prepared in advance. If you have a question that you brought from home, it's good, but the idea is for you to say what you're thinking about now. If you feel comfortable speaking in English, do so, but otherwise we have Anna here in the booth who will interpret anything that you want to say in Catalan or Spanish into English. So it's your moment now. You can raise the hand, we'll send you a microphone, you can let ideas come to you, there's no rush. And we can now start this conversation with you.
Thank you.
tranquil·lament,
There's no rush.
anirà venint.
It will come to you.
Molt bé.
Okay.
Sí, sí. És el que té tenir una amiga així, que t'ha posat amb aquest embolic.
Yes, your friend
Endavant.
got you into this mess, didn't she?
Esteu bé?
Are you okay?
Sí?
Yes.
Necessiteu més temps?
Do you need more time?
li faig una altra pregunta.
Should I ask another question while you get into the flow of things? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Aquí i aquí.
Over here and over there as well.
Perfecte, endavant.
Great. Yes, go ahead.
Endavant. Pots començar.
Yeah, you can start.
Do you think there was scammers than the millennials ones?
Sorry again.
Sí. Pots tornar a fer la pregunta?
Can you ask the question again? You can ask in English, that's fine, but you can ask in Spanish or Catalan. We have interpretation for that reason, no worries. Go ahead, ask the question again, please.
There was scammers than the millennials ones?
Okay, non capito.
Un moment. Li estan traduint.
Oh, scammers. Yeah. I mean, when I was writing this book, there were obviously a lot of scammers going on, from the Bitcoin scammer to Elizabeth Holmes, the Fire Festival, 2 documentaries. A lot of scamming. And one of the things I was trying to work out when I was writing is why there was a lot of scamming in the 19th century, people pretending to be people they weren't, people trying to claim inheritances that weren't theirs, all of that kind of thing. And the more I thought about it, I thought, when you're in a society where you feel like there is no way to get ahead, where the game is rigged, where the rich are getting richer, where the gap seems impossibly large, where the head of any company is making 400 times as much money as the man who works on the shop floor, why wouldn't you scam? If there's no other way to get ahead, it becomes a great temptation. So it doesn't surprise me, the kind of millennial tendency towards fraud, scam, bullshit, fake brand management, whatever it is, because they're living in a society in which it's so hard to move. You compare it to me, born in 1975, young in about your age in about 1990. What did I have in front of me? A free education, free university, affordable housing, a possible job for life. What did they have in front of them? None of that. So that is very similar to the Victorian situation where, again, you could not be sure of schooling, healthcare, housing, anything. So people made their own lives, and sometimes by way of lies.
Aquí.
¿Crees que la gent...
Do you think that people think or whether it is ethical or not to say what they're going to say before they tell a lie? Do they consider whether it's ethical to do so?
I mean, come on, be real. Like, when you're online, you're lying about everything like 99% of the time. I have a 14-year-old, so I'm aware of how it goes, how it works. So lying has become so natural to people. They think of it maybe as a form of self-presentation, or a fake public self, or a second self that exists digitally, which is separate from the one that you have at home. For me, that feeling of having a fake self, I mean, it's happening right now, right? I'm on stage, I have to be Zadie Smith to you. It's nothing to do with who I am in my house, with my kids, with my friends, or if I'm out dancing, I'm a different person. So I'm aware of what it's like to have that gap between who you feel you are and who you have to be in public. What amazes me is that what used to be the problem only of public people is now everybody's problem. Everybody's famous. Everybody has a fake identity. Everybody has to perform, not only to a crowd full of people like this, but to their own friends. So that kind of everyday deceit, it's not that I judge it, I just think it's so heavy on people, it's so exhausting. People want to live in truth, and it's tiring to play this person day and night.
Aquí hi ha una altra pregunta.
There's another one over here.
Està molt bé. aquest
It's good to have this much enthusiasm. We'll get to you, no worries.
Endavant.
Yes, go ahead.
Don't be shy.
Que si su sueño de pequeña ya era ser escritora.
Was your dream as a child being a writer already when you were a child? Was it your dream?
That's a good question. Why are you laughing? It's good. It's a good question. I wanted to be a singer. That's what I wanted to be. My family are in music, my brothers are rappers, and that's what I wanted to do. But I realized really quickly that I don't like performing. I'm enjoying myself tonight, but for me, I like to be by myself. I like to work alone, and writing is perfect for that. So you get to be in relation with people, but you're not there when it happens. When my brother's on stage, he's on stage. He has to be on stage. You're right in front of... He's now a comedian, so he's telling jokes. People have to laugh. It's immediate. Whereas if I write a joke, I don't have to be there to find out if it's funny or not. I'm back in my house. So for me, writing quite early on, by the time I was 14, I thought, this is for me, not this thing of being on stage. So by then I wanted to be a writer.
Agafem més preguntes. Agafarem una aquí.
Get more questions, one over here, and then we will go to you over there. We're seeing you, we see you.
Hauríem d'intentar baixar una mica el volum
We
perquè
should
la interpretació
try
se senti
and lower the volume in the room so that we can hear the interpretation.
Fascinating how you mentioned that identity is a flux reality and it's not really a fixed thing. However, in the journey of, through that, what about the times that we feel lost? Is there a resolution to that?
It's hard, I have to put my head back into being 14 and 15. If I'm honest, it's a long time ago, but I remember being lost and being stressed, particularly by the projections that people put on you, the way other people think of you. So in my family, obviously it's a mixed family. Some of us are dark, some of us are light, some have full afros, some of us have straighter hair. I was very aware as I was going through the world that as far as other people were concerned, we didn't look like a family, or I don't look like my brother, or my mother doesn't look like my mother, or all of these things. So you're constantly dealing with other people's projection of what you appear to be to them. And now I don't have any of those anxieties. I know exactly who I am. I know who my family are. I know where I come from. But I remember that feeling of thinking, is it what I feel that's important, or what the man who walks in the street says I am? If they think I'm Moroccan or Spanish or whatever they think I am. It's always hard, that balance between what you know to be true or what you hope is true and what others see and experience. But you also have to be aware that what others feel and experience is relevant. If somebody says to you, you've been unkind to me, you've hurt my feelings, it's true. You have to hear it. You have to recognize that you can't just walk around the world saying, I'm a very kind person, I'm very empathetic. That's not your judgment to make. Other people will let you know if you're kind and empathetic. So there are limits to your self-definition because you live in a world with other people and they're the people who experience you. At the same time, you do have things in yourself which you feel are fundamental and that sometimes you have to hold on to despite other people's projections, for sure. So it's not easy, but I don't know. If you ask my honest opinion, it very much helps to have love of any kind. Family, romantic, friends. It's like a bulwark, something you put between you and the world. It helps.
Aquí.
So you said that companies view us as a product when it comes to social media. So how do you think that affects our behavior in those spaces, in those online spaces?
I mean, you guys are younger, so you are about to... I mean, you've got an incredible opportunity in front of you. It's so exciting, the thought that you might all, as one, shut this down. It's thrilling. I don't know if that's going to happen. I have no idea. But I feel like the edges of it. Like when I talk to millennials, they were played so hard. They were played so hard. They were told, it's great. Everything's free. Content is free. I was just talking to a young journalist. They all stopped buying newspapers. They stopped paying for subscriptions. And then they got out of university. I'd like to be a journalist. No. There's no jobs. There's no money. You're not getting paid because you allowed this to happen. Same with music, same with... They got played so hard. And that is... it's not surprising that when I think of the millennials, I think of, indigenous people on the beach in Colombia when the Spanish came. They didn't know. They had no protection against what was coming. It was like a wave that came over them. But you lot know. Or if you don't know by now, Jesus, I don't know what to tell you. So I think it's like an incredible possibility because normally in enormous systems of injustice, to try and get out of it, you have to do many things. It's really complicated. The only thing you have to do in this case is stop using it. And these companies are over, overnight. It's happening with the dating apps, done. All you have to do to bankrupt these people is stop using it. So that, to me, is like a thrilling possibility, because it's not that hard. And I think it's going to happen.
Aquí?
Over here?
Sí, tu. Ara et portaré el
Yes,
micròfon.
you. They'll bring you a microphone, and then over here.
I està sonant una música una mica forta.
We're hearing some loud music behind us. I don't know. Oh, there we go. It happened. I have a superpower. Do you have any advice for those of us who would like, or for people who would like to be writers in the future?
Wait, tell me that again. I think it's gone on. Yeah.
Yeah, now, do you have any advice for people who want to become writers in the future?
I mean, first of all of us have to decide that it's worth paying for writing. You might also have to, you know, if you want to be a musician, you might have to start. Sorry, I've got the translation coming in there. You might also want to think about paying for music, or just valuing things. If you want to be part of these worlds, you have to value them. If you want them to be free, then you're also saying you want to give your labor for free. It's a circle. You don't get to get free things and then also get paid for something that no one's willing to pay for. But if you want to be a writer, the best advice is to read. I have to tell you that writing is the best job in the world, as far as I'm concerned. I love it. I mean, having no boss, that's pretty fantastic. Thinking for yourself, communicating sometimes at things like this, talking to people, being in relation with people that you'll never know personally. It's moving. It's an amazing opportunity. But reading is the beginning of it. Reading as much as you can, as widely as you can. Being open to books that might have nothing to do with you, nothing to do with your story, your family, your country, but they're by human beings. And there's so many of them. There's like 5,000 years worth of written work, and it's there. You can just go into any library and pick it up. You can know what Socrates thinks tomorrow. You can read Alice Walker. You can read it's there. It's available. So that's the opportunity. But it's like without reading, there is no writing. You can't just sit down and start writing. It's a practice. It's learning what other people have said so that you can say something new. And it's joyful. It's a joyful thing. And it's still a business, just about. I mean, it's struggling, but it's still possible. And as far as I know, as a reader, I can't speak as a writer, but as a reader, to me, it's still important. And when I'm reading books, I still feel like I'm in connection with human beings in a way that I really don't often when I'm online. There, I think I'm in communication with an algorithm. I want to be in communication with a human.
Tenim temps encara.
We have time, so when she answers, you don't need to have your hand raised the whole time. You will end up hurt. So you can wait. We'll pass the floor over here and then over there, but no worries. You don't need to keep your hand up the whole time. I see you. Do you think that with many, many, many lies, you can end up becoming that person?
That's such a good question. I think about that sometimes. Again, I have a 14-year-old and a girl, so I know about it. I know what it's like to spend 9 hours, maybe 10, sometimes even more, on TikTok, on Insta, until 4 in the morning. I know what's going on. I know how it feels because I see it. And yeah, I think there's an old quote by an old writer, dead now, John Updike, who says, fame is like a mask that eats your face. And sometimes I think the networks are like that too. You are famous on a social network, essentially. And it begins to eat your face until you can't really remember who you were. And you must all know people who are, everyone's online, I'm online too, everyone's online a bit, but you must know those people who are chronically online. When you sit down to talk to them, it's like talking to a meme. It's like people just stupid jokes, the same, like the language of the internet in your face. And you're trying to talk to someone and they're just giving you that over and over again. That's the extreme version where you think, where's the person? Like, where's the person behind the meme? Or can I get to the person? Or, I mean, I'm sure you've all seen sometimes people going out with faces that are really painted for the camera, not for human consumption. So you look at the face, like, there's a human being underneath that 5 inches of makeup, which looks great maybe on the camera, but we're in the sunlight. I'd love to see your human face. So I sometimes feel that it can get really inside you to the point that you can't remember what it was like to live without it, or even the idea of living without it seems incredible. But it doesn't take much to come back to yourself. 2 days with it off in your bag, you start thinking differently, behaving a little differently, your eyes are up, things are slightly different. Maybe it's never going to go away, but maybe there's a way of reducing some of the falsity of it in your life. And also, of course, there's a different kind of internet that could be designed. It doesn't have to go through 4 companies. You can have peer-to-peer internet. You can have small local internets. It doesn't have to be in this form. Some of you will grow up to be coders, computer people, who might design a different kind of system, one that's livable for people, one that's less oppressive.
Allà al fons.
Do you think that romanticizing the past is also a lie?
Say again?
If romanticizing the past is also a lie?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that was part of writing this book. It's like, in England, we have a very heavy nostalgia industry, right? I'm sure if you visited London or you see it, we have this tourism industry which is based on the idea that England was this cozy chocolate box, pretty, cozy country. But England, of course, was the place where, you know, we sent children to Australia, people your age, because they stole a bag of sugar, or we hung them, or we drew people down the streets in 15th, 16th century England, cut them open, took their guts out, and dragged their bodies through town. This was also England. So there is a romanticization, but both ends of our attitude to the past, making it romantic, imagining it was always better, and also imagining it was a place of non-stop terrible oppression and nothing good ever happened there. Both of those versions of the past are inaccurate. And what I was trying to show in the 19th century is that you've got this unbelievably corrupt and evil system of plantation slavery throughout the Caribbean happening at the same time as a mass movement, a mass labor movement, which is trying to establish the vote for working class men and women, is trying to establish the principle of education for poor people, is trying to establish labor laws. The world is always a mix of progress and horror, always, as it is at this moment too. So having a more realistic view, both of your present and of the past, is helpful, I think. It gives you an idea of what progress looks like, which is very uneven. It's always happening and it's always being taken back. And it's a constant battle.
Podeu aixecar les mans aquí?
Now you can raise your hand if you have a question here at the end of the row and over there at the back. And at the front, we'll come to you, we'll get to you.
My question is, as someone who comes from another culture myself, in which way did your cultural heritage influence your way of writing?
I think the main thing is, I don't like to get sentimental about cultural heritage, but if I was going to, it would be the principle of rhythm. And I think it's a generalization, but when I think about the writing of my diaspora, which is the African diaspora, what you notice is a sense of rhythm and a concern with music and tempo and the rhythm of a sentence. I guess in my household, as I said to you, it's musicians, rappers, singers, writers, and the principle, and a comedian. And the principle of all those art forms is rhythm. You need rhythm to tell a good joke. You need to know when to put the punchline in. You need timing. And that matters to me in writing, the idea of timing. And I've also written about music and dance a lot because that's a part of me. I love to dance, I love to sing, I love music. And I'm aware, particularly when I visit West Africa, which is where my people originally come from, that these are fundamental parts of West African culture: beat, rhythm, timing, music. So I like to think sentimentally that some of that has passed down to me. But you know, the passing down of culture is very imprecise art, and things change and become diluted, and there's no purity in it. And also, I'm a mongrel myself, a mix of England and Jamaica. But that's the thing I notice, rhythm.
Allà i allà al fons.
Over there and at the back.
¿En qué te inspiraste para sacar este
What
libro?
was your inspiration to write this book?
In the end, the inspiration was I wanted to know how change happens. It's that simple. Like, given the enormous problems in front of us, the environment first of all, the economy as well, and this crazy economic inequality, the problems of Palo Alto, all of those things that are sitting in front of us, the wars, I wanted to know how things change. And I thought that thinking about slavery, which you could also call like racialized capital, right? It's a business in which you use people as products and you don't pay them. And you also physically torture them sometimes. That business lasts from the mid-1600s till 1830 and makes an unimaginable amount of money. And I think the only comparison you have, actually, is with what happened in Palo Alto, in that those guys, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, they are making more money than anyone has ever made in the history of the world, proportionately. That's the important point. And during plantation slavery, those people were making more money than anybody had made in the history of the world for the same reason. No regulation, no labor laws, and the product was free. So I wanted to know how you end a system like that. Like, what does it take? Just for my own, like, knowledge, so I could think about it. And I went into that book with an open mind. I really wanted to know. I was willing for any explanation to be the answer. And the answer that I found when I read, and I was reading for 10 years, is that it takes everybody. So it takes the slaves, obviously, revolting, but it also takes nice white women refusing to drink their tea with sugar. It takes masses of working class people sending petitions to parliament. It takes politicians themselves. It takes activists. It takes everybody. And I think that's an optimistic thought, that particularly when you're dealing with something like the environment crisis, it's going to take everybody. And no matter what little thing you do, it counts.
Endavant.
Yes, go ahead. Do you believe it is necessary to lie on our day-to-day? Do we need to lie on our daily lives?
Look, some lies are benign. You know, if your friend comes in and says, "Does this look good?" and it doesn't, just say it looks good. It's not a terrible thing. Some lies are kind. Some lies are useful and helpful and reasonable. But I guess the lie I find intolerable is the lie you tell to yourself. That's the one I find really hard. And I think I spent my whole life always trying to work out when I'm lying to myself, which is often because I'm a human being. When I'm trying to believe something just because I want it to be true, when I don't really want to face something. So when I'm writing, that's the exercise. It's trying to decide not what I want to be true, not what I want to appear to other people. I'm not trying to get your approval. I don't care if you like me. I'm trying to understand the truth of the situation and the truth of myself and the truth of the way I think, which also involves a lot of the time knowing sometimes you will be wrong, you will make a mistake, you will be wrong about a situation. You have to listen and take it on board. That's the hardest thing. That's the thing I find hardest. Everybody wants to be right. But in the practice of writing, I've just learned that there's so much I don't know. Life is just a continual revelation of the things that you don't know and don't understand and are wrong about. And you need a continual humility in that situation, and not instead to lie to yourself to make yourself feel better.
Aquí davant.
Here at the front and over there.
Farem aquestes dues preguntes
We will
més.
take these two last questions here and over there, yes.
Endavant.
Hey.
Go ahead. Catalan, Spanish, however you want. You said you are a mix of Jamaica and England, but do you feel more English or Jamaican, and if so, why?
Well, she asked, you say you are my Jamaican, my English. Do you feel more Jamaican or English?
I mean, I'm born in England, so I'm English. But I'm a black woman who was born in England. Jamaica is my heritage, it's my mother's country. But I'm English. But maybe novelists are different from a lot of citizens in that I'm not a nationalist. I don't feel these feelings very strongly. You know, I just don't feel that way. Most of the time, if you ask me who I am, I feel like I'm nobody. That's my main feeling of life. And that's where I write from. I don't feel like anyone in particular. I feel like someone through whom stories pass and I write them down. And I absolutely understand that lots of people don't feel that way. That people feel very strongly that they are from a particular country or from a particular place and from a particular people. I get it. But if you're asking me honestly, I don't feel that way. The thing I feel strongest about is my neighborhood. And I think maybe when you grow up poor, your streets mean a lot to you. So my neighborhood, when I think about where do I come from, I think of my neighborhood, my postcode even. But I don't have strong nationalist feelings. I love England, but I've also I lived in Italy, I lived in New York. There's a lot of places I could live. I want to live in Senegal. I don't have that kind of attachment, that kind of feeling of roots or even need for them. And I don't know why that is, but my home is literature and it's a good home for me.
Endavant.
Yes, go ahead. Do you believe that lies and deceit can be self-defense mechanisms in the society we live in?
Oh, what's happening? Wait, what is the question? Do I believe that lies and deceit can be a defense mechanism? I mean, of course, but right at the moment we're being lied to so much and all the time that I feel like people, don't you hunger to be told the truth just sometimes? Just to be told the truth directly and to be spoken to like you're someone who can handle the truth? I know, I can only speak for myself, but I know when I lie, it's usually to protect some version of myself or in front of others. And it never feels particularly good. The place where you do it most obviously, by the way, is when you're a parent. You lie to your children all the time about pretty much everything. From the moment they're born onwards, when they say, is everything going to be all right? You say, yeah. When they say, are you going to die? You say, no, not for ages, don't worry about it. You spend your whole time lying. So I'm aware of lies as like a useful defense sometimes, or a necessary thing in relations, but I don't know. I think you'll find the older you get, the more you need truth like food. You need it. One more, do we have?
Hem arribat al final d'aquesta conversa. Podeu aplaudir.
We've reached the end of the conversation. You can give a round to Zadie Smith for all of these answers. Thank you so very much.
Moltes gràcies a vosaltres també per aquestes preguntes tan interessants i fins a propera.
Thank you.